the year 1936 is very crucial in understanding the future progress of the movement that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was developing for the emancipation of his people, the untouchables. And this year is a sort of landmark as far as the history of India is concerned, or we can say this period is very significant even to understand the political history of India, because just prior or at the end of 1935 the Government of India Act was enacted and Indians were to be given more rights to govern themselves, and lot of arguments or lot of thinking and lots of thoughts of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar got into the Government of India Act 1935, and it's going to be a very new India after the Act of 1935. Towards the end of the year 1935, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar gave a clarion call of the conversion. At Evla, on 30th October 1935, he declared that he won't die a Hindu. But even if we look at the history prior to 1935, even during the roundtable conferences, the rallying point which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was trying to make is to show that the untouchables were not the part of Hinduism. But in 1935, he made it very clear and very explicit that he won't die a Hindu. That means he will completely sever any ties with Hinduism. And in this particular background, the undelivered speech, which was written in 1936, titled and published as The Annihilation of Caste, is a very landmark account of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's thinking of that period. And during the same period, when he prepared the speech or the undelivered speech, which was later published in a booklet form as The Annihilation of the Caste, he worked on a very important speech which he delivered in Marathi, and which was titled, when it was published in Janata, as Mukti Kon Pathe, which can be translated in English as what way emancipation, or which way liberty, which way freedom. In other words, the speech can also be titled as Why Go for Conversion? What is the necessity of the conversion? Why it is meant, or what it is meant to convert. And the speech, though it was delivered, a very important program that was held in Dadar, and that program was the result of the Evla conference, where the resolution was passed that the Mahars won't be Hindus. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in fact convened a conference on 30th and 31st May 1936 at Dadar, Bombay. But in fact, this conference was not convened by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, but it was organized and the fund was raised by the people in Bombay who were very interested in discussing this issue of why conversion. So they invited Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar to give a speech on this occasion. And about 35,000 untouchable Mahars came for this conference. So it was a very big conference. 35,000 untouchable Mahars came for the conference, and it was held in the big Shamiana, and it can be said to be one of the biggest gatherings in the early phase or the developing phase of the movement. And there was a huge pandal erected in order to house 35,000 people. And there were slogans written everywhere, all around the pandals. And some of the slogans I am going to read for you. Man is not for religion, religion is for man. That was one of the slogans. To become human, convert yourself. To get organized, convert yourself. To achieve strength, convert yourself. So on and on. Why do you remain in that religion which insults you at every step? That was one of the sentences written. Those who profess that the God is omnipresent but treat men worse than animals are hypocrites. Do not keep company of such people. That was another slogan. Those who feed ants with sugar but kill men by prohibiting them from drinking water are hypocrites. Do not keep their company. So around 20 or so odd slogans were written all over the pandals in order to really inspire the people. But in fact, these all slogans which were written all over the pandals came from the speech that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar gave on that occasion. It means that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar very carefully prepared this speech well in advance. The way he used to do all the times when he had to make a very important speech, he would spend considerable time in order to prepare the speech. Looking at the context, looking at the situation, and to whom he is going to address, he used to spend a lot of time in preparing the speech. So we can say that this speech was not extempore. It was not prepared or created at that spur of time, but it was created beforehand. So it was a prepared speech, and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar very carefully drafted and crafted this very important speech. So we can understand that a lot of thinking of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar might have went into preparation of this speech. There were leaders, there was media, there were people from all over the places very eager to catch points which Dr. Babasaheb was going to make on that occasion, because for the whole India was thrilled. In fact, lots of people in India became very intrigued by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, including Gandhi, because when Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar declared in 1935 that he will relinquish Hinduism, he will give up Hinduism, everybody was astonished. And therefore, all the eyes were set and all the ears were very eager to understand or to listen to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar as to what he is going to speak on that occasion. Stanley Jones, a European missionary, and B.J. Jadhav were the special invitees to this occasion. Also, a considerable number of people from the Sikh community, also from the Muslim community attended this program, because they were wanting to understand the position of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and they were trying to catch any direct or indirect hint which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was going to make. Mr. D. Dolas, actually his name was Shri Revji Dagluji Dolas. He was the president of the reception committee and the man who put so much effort into having this conference in place. He was the president of the reception committee. And one Mr. B.S. Venkatrao, a depressed classes leader from Hyderabad, presided over this conference. So leader from the state of Hyderabad presided over this conference. And the object of the conference was to devise ways and means to implement the resolution passed at Evla on 30th October 1935, because the resolution was passed in Evla and this conference followed the resolution. You can say that it was the after step of the conference that was held in Evla. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar rose to speak on this occasion, addressing 35,000 people in a big massive pandal at Dadar in Bombay. He took the papers in his hand and he started delivering his speech in a very fiery language. And the speech is quite a long speech. It must have taken quite very easily 2-3 hours to deliver that speech, because the speech runs into several pages even when it got printed. So we can say that that speech might have taken quite a longer time to deliver. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was not a very fast and hurried speaker. He used to pause, he used to let people think, he used to take their response, he used to assess the whole situation. So he was not like any other political leader, but he was a teacher. He was a kind of a man who will provoke the thoughts among the audiences. Because he has to reach to the 35,000 people, he can't rush to his arguments, because he has to clear every argument in a very simple and clear language. So you can understand the situation that the people might be in that pandal for quite a considerable length of time. Even we can say 3 hours listening to the talk which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was delivering on that occasion. So having covered the context and the on-the-ground situation of the event, we will now move to the structure of the speech and the content of the speech. So of course, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar went into quite a very important points which can be summarized as why there is a need to convert. What is the need to convert? Why relinquish the Hinduism? So he spent considerable time in explaining why conversion. Then he went on explaining various aspects which will fall out from the act of conversion. So it is very important that he spent considerable time in explaining to the people or the audiences as to why or what are the aspects of the conversion. And then he went into Hinduism as to showing how it's against the interest of the untouchables and why there is no benefit in being a Hindu. Then he went into quite a lot of theory, or even in practice we can say, as to what is going to be the goal of conversion. Why conversion? So he explains the need, and then he explains the situation, then he explains why there is the need of this stage. So it's quite a very deep speech, we can say. Then he also, because he was a lawyer, he was trained in law, he took the arguments of the people who opposed the act of conversion and he took them on very clearly. He is trying to argue, or he is trying to answer or silence the opponent of the act of conversion. Not only that, but he is also raising an important question: progress or conversion, which first? So he is also trying to say what is going to come first, whether conversion or progress. Then he is guiding the audiences or his people, clearing their doubts or any doubts which might arise in their minds about the act of conversion. So he argued the opponents. He is talking with the people, his people, who are eager to understand why conversion. But also he is taking their doubts, bringing them into open and trying to answer them so that he can clear their doubts. And in the concluding stage of the speech, he dramatically appeals them to think for themselves and not on his behalf. Says that you have to decide what you have to do. I am not going to decide for you, but my decision is made. I am going to leave Hinduism. It's up to you, to the masses, to decide whether they would like to quit Hinduism or not. And in the last para, he guides them. He says that I have a message to give you, and he gives the message of the Buddha to the audiences. So this is in a brief the scheme of the speech, which we can see when we read the entire speech. So the material is very clearly laid, very sequential, and it leads from one thing to another and to the final conclusion as to why conversion is more important than the progress. Why conversion is so vital, so critical for the emancipation. So the goal, he begins with the goal and he ends with the goal, in between conveying the people about the necessity of taking or undertaking this act of conversion. So he says that when he begins with the need for conversion, he cites very many real events which were happening at that period of time as to how the Hindus discriminate against the Dalits. What sort of atrocities that are being heaped upon on the untouchables by the Hindus. So he says that the conversion is a very serious issue because it's not the child play, it's not the subject of entertainment. So it's a very, very important subject. And he says that it's a very vital question. And also he wants to clear some kind of a doubtful air beforehand as to why he organized the conference of only Mahars, because he says that after I gave the declaration that we will give up Hinduism, he doesn't want to impose it on the other caste. Rather, he wants them to think through whether they would like to convert and give up Hinduism. So he says that why the conference of only Mahar has been convened is this: what should be done for the betterment of our life? So the conference, the sole question which was in the mind of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar at that time is, or in the mind of the people involved in the conference, was what should be done for the betterment of our life? Because through this conference, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and his followers are not asking for any safeguards from the government and nor for any social rights. So this conference has a very different tone, because prior to 35 we have seen the history that we were fighting for getting the political demands in place. But Babasaheb Ambedkar makes it very clear that through this conference we are not going to demand anything from the government or any social rights. This conference is focused on what should be done for the betterment of our life. So if you understand the whole tone or the change in the tone of this conference, it's solely focused on what should be done for the betterment of our life. How are we to carve the path for our future life? What is going to be the path that we are going to take in order to better our future? So he says that after his declaration, he is trying to test the public conscience, where people are ready, whether the untouchables are ready to really renounce Hinduism. So once he has given a shock to the society, he wants to access what has happened after the shock that he gave in Evla. He wanted to access, he wanted to study, he wanted to know what is the response of the people or the untouchables about this very act of conversion. So he says, therefore, that unless the initiative comes from those singular castes, that he is not going to force them to really follow on his path. And therefore, in this conference, he has only organized the Mahars because he wants the conversion to be en masse and with much hype and hoopla. It should not be a very silent event. It should be a public event where the people en masse will participate in such a program. And he makes it clear that it's going to be a very different, very difficult subject to talk about the idea of conversion. So therefore he says, I will try my level best to explain the subject as simply as possible. It's a very difficult subject, because if you throw back your mind 75 years back or 60 years back, if you can just imagine the status of the people that time and the level of awareness people might be having. And to talk to them about the idea of conversion is going to be a very difficult and tough task. It's not going to be a very easy task. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar says that it's going to be a tough task to talk to you about the conversion, the idea, very idea of conversion. And therefore I will try to be as simple as possible in delivering my message clear to you. And then he goes into the issue of conversion. So he says that in order to really understand or view at the matter of conversion, there are two aspects through which we can look at the matter of conversion, and one aspect of looking at the conversion is the social as well as religious and material as well as spiritual. So it's not just one point of view, or he is not trying to look at the act of conversion from one particular view or one particular aspect. He says that social as well as religious, material as well as spiritual. He says whatever may be the aspect or line of thinking, it is necessary to understand in the beginning the nature of the untouchability and how it is practiced. It is very important to understand the nature of untouchability and how it is practiced. Without this understanding, you will not be able to realize the real meaning underlying my declaration of conversion. In order to have a clear understanding of the untouchability and its practice in real life, I want you to recall the stories of the atrocities perpetrated against you. Just recall the current social situation, and we can find the similar instances even in the present context about the atrocities or the violence that's committed against the untouchables. The instances of beating by caste Hindus for the simple reason that you have claimed the right to enroll your children in the government schools, or right to draw water from a public well, or right to take a marriage procession with the groom on a horseback are very common. So he cites a few cases or few forms of atrocities which will make sense to the people, because the stories, these are not just stories for them, but these are the real life events for the people. The untouchables are beaten for putting on clothes of superior quality. They have been whipped because they used the utensils made of metal like copper. Their houses are burnt because the land has been brought for cultivation. They are beaten for putting on sacred thread on their body. They are beaten for refusing to carry the dead animals and eat the carrion, or for walking through the village road with socks and shoes on, or not bowing down before the caste Hindus, for taking water in the copper pot while going out in the field to ease. Recently an instance has been noticed where the untouchables were beaten for serving chapatis in the dinner party. Even today, such kind of incidences are not rare. They are happening in rural India all the time. So he says that the material aspect of the conversion is very important to understand why there is a need to convert. So he says that these things are happening all over, and very few of you might have realized as to why all this happens. What is the root of their tyranny? Why do they beat you? Why do the Hindus beat you? And he says that this is a matter of a class struggle. It's not a simple matter. It's a matter of a strong class struggle. They are not against the individuals. They are not anti-personality. Want to kill you as the individual members of the community. Why they are opposed to you? Because the problem of untouchability is a matter of a class struggle. So it's not a rivalry between the two individuals, but it's the rivalry or it's the conflict between the two classes, the class of the caste Hindus and the class of the untouchables. So he asks the people, he challenges the people to think it more than the individual problem. It's not the individual problem, but it is the outcome, or this tyranny is due to the class conflict. It is the conflict between the two classes, the class of the caste Hindus and the class of the untouchables. The reason for their anger is very simple. Your behaving on par with them insults them. Your status in their eyes is low, you are impure, you must remain at the lowest rung, then alone they will allow you to live happily. The moment you try to equalize them, they will try to push you down. Because in their eyes, you are lower, you are no human beings, you are lesser than a human, you are untouchable. So in their eyes, your status is low. The moment you try to raise your status to their level, they are surely going to bring you down through tyranny. The instances given above also prove one more fact, that the untouchability is not a short or temporary feature, it is a permanent one. This feature is not based on just one instance, but it's a permanent feature. And we have to understand it very clearly as to how it is the permanent one. To put it straight, it can be said that the struggle between the caste Hindus and untouchables is a permanent phenomena. It is eternal because the religion which has placed you at the lowest level of the society is itself eternal according to the belief of the caste Hindu people. It's a very difficult subject which Babasaheb Ambedkar put in a very simple language. No change according to times and circumstances is possible. You are at the lowest rung of the ladder today, you shall remain lowest forever. This means the struggle between Hindus and untouchables shall continue forever. Because it's not the rivalry between the two individuals, it's the class struggle. How will you survive through this struggle is the main question, and unless you think over it, there is no way out. You have to think over as to how you are going to come out of this struggle between the caste Hindus and the untouchables. Because it's a permanent, it's a perpetual, because it's their religious belief that is being operating in their minds which makes this struggle between the caste Hindus and the untouchables a perpetual one. And therefore you have to think it very clearly. Those who desire to live in obedience to the dictates of the Hindus, those who wish to remain their slaves, they do not need to think over this problem. But those who wish to live a life of self-respect and equality will have to think over this. How should we survive through this struggle? For me, it is not difficult to answer this question. Those who are assembled here will have to agree that in any struggle, one who holds strength becomes the victor. Those who are mighty, those who are strong, those who are having the strength are going to win in any struggle. Who has no strength need not expect success. If you have no strength, you can't be successful in this struggle. This has been proved by experience, and I do not need to cite illustration to prove it. So it's a very clear tone. It talks about the tyrannies, it talks about how the tyrannies or the violence or the atrocities are heaped upon the untouchables. Why there is this kind of a tyranny? Because there is a class struggle between the caste Hindus and the untouchables. Why there is this ongoing caste struggle or a class struggle? Because it is based on religion, and the caste Hindus thinks that this is their religious duty, and therefore it's not going to vanish so soon. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar says that it's very dramatically that it's a struggle between the caste Hindus and the untouchables, and in this struggle, who is going to win? Which party is going to win? The party which is going to be a victor in this struggle should have some strength, should have some power, and unless you have some power, you are not going to win this struggle. So he says, following the argument, that achieve the power first. Now this word power is very much abused, but Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar makes this word very clear. What is a power? What is a strength? The question which you might now consider is whether you have enough power to survive through this struggle, because this is the ongoing struggle. Do you have the enough power or enough strength to survive through this struggle? three types of strengths are known to man. There is a manpower, wealth, and mental strength. Keep these three things in your mind. Manpower, you need a manpower in order to build up your strength. You need wealth or the financial resources in order to build up the strength. You need mental strength in order to really be a strong party in any struggle. So Babasaheb Ambedkar asked the question to the audiences, which of these you think that you possess? Then he takes on all these three aspects of the strength. He says, as far as manpower is concerned, it is clear that you are in the minority. You are in the minority, you don't have manpower. You lack manpower. In Bombay Presidency, the untouchables are only 1/8 of the total population. That is true, and that also is unorganized. The caste within themselves do not allow them to organize. They are not even compact, but scattered through the villages. The caste within themselves do not allow them to organize. They are scattered. They are like not even compact. Due to these regions, this meager population is of no use as a fighting force for the critical dwelling place of the untouchables. Financial strength is just the same. It is an undisputed fact that you have at least a little bit of manpower, but finances you have none. That time there was no scheme of any finance. There was no finance that time. You have no trades, no business, no service, no land. The pieces of bread thrown out by the higher caste are your only means of livelihood. You have no financial strength. You have no food, no clothes. What financial strength can you have? You have no capacity to get redress from the law courts if injustice is done to you, because you have no money to fight the court cases. So how you are going to get the justice? And as far as the mental strength is concerned, the condition is still worse. For centuries, you have not only served the higher caste, but also tolerated their insults and tyranny without grudge and complaint, which has killed the sense of retortion and revolution. So you have no confidence, no vigor, no ambition, because it has been completely vanished from you. You have no confidence, no vigor, no ambition to really throw away these shackles of slavery. All you have become helpless, unenergetic, and pale and weak. Everywhere there is an atmosphere of defeatism, pessimism. Now what to do in this situation? Even the slightest idea that you can do something does not arise in anybody's mind. So that's what he is directly addressing to the audiences in the pandal full of 35,000 people, very eager to listen to their leader. And then he says, why are you only oppressed? Why others are not oppressed? Why are you only oppressed? I have no doubt that you are oppressed because you have no strength. It is not that you alone are in minority. The Muslims are equally small in number. Like Mahar monks, they too have few houses in the village. But no one dares to trouble the Muslims while you are always a victim of tyranny. Why is this so? So he gives a very famous example that because even if there are 2-3 Muslims in the village, they have the support of the worldwide Muslims. So he says that the strength required to face this tyranny needs to be secured from outside. Because you have no strength within, you have to seek the strength without. How are you to gain this strength is really an important question, and you will have to ponder over this with an unbiased mind. Strength needs to be brought from outside. Why the strength needs to be brought out from outside? Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar gives his arguments very logically, because as I said that he was a trained lawyer. He was a very eloquent speaker. He was a very thoughtful man. He was a very inspiring person. And therefore his arguments are all very clearly laid out. In this country, nobody seems to be pained by the poverty and suffering of the people. In this country, nobody seems to be pained by the poverty and the suffering of the people. And if at all anybody is pained, he does not try to eradicate it. He does not try to eradicate it. People come to help of those in poverty, sorrow and suffering, but only amongst one's own caste or religion. Even if there is any charity in this country, it is limited to their own caste. This is a perverted sense of morality. This is a perverse morality. That's what Babasaheb says. It cannot be forgotten that it's prevalent in this country. In the villages, the untouchables suffer at the hands of the Hindus. It does not mean that there are no men of other religions and that they do not realize that the maltreatment to the untouchables is unjust, or that the oppression of the untouchables by the Hindus is most unjustified. But they do not come to rescue to the untouchable. What is the reason behind it? If you ask them why do they not help you, they reply that it is not their business to interfere, and that had you been members of their religion, they would have helped you. From this you will realize one thing, that unless you establish close relations with some other society, unless you join some other religion, you cannot get the strength from outside. Because inside there is no strength, you have to get the strength from outside. It clearly means you must leave your religion and assimilate yourself with some other society. Without that, you cannot gain the strength of that society. So long as you do not have strength, you and your future generation will have to lead your lives in the same pitiable condition. So this is the material aspects of the conversion which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is putting forth before the audiences. He says that there is a tyranny, there is a violence, there are the cases of atrocities. You have all experienced the case of atrocities yourself. What is the result of these atrocities? It is the result of the class struggle between the caste Hindus and the untouchables. And it's not the one way, it's not the one problem, or it's not the one time problem, it's a perpetual problem, because the caste Hindus believe in their religion, and so do you, because you think that you are the part and parcel of that system, and therefore the problem is going to be perpetual. How to break that problem? Why you are the only oppressed? Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar says that you have no power. He says that you have no strength, and therefore you suffer. And what are the various aspects of the strength? Manpower, wealth and mental state. And he goes on to say that these strengths are not available in the society, and therefore they have to bring this strength from outside. And that is the scheme of argumentation as far as the material aspect of the conversion is concerned. And in the next lecture, we are going to look into the spiritual aspects of conversion.